Good evening and welcome to Thai PBS English News Service. I'm Subhajon Klinswan. The National Anti-Corruption Commission has decided to freeze 20 million baht worth of assets in the name of the embattled former Transport Permanent Secretary, despite the Transport Ministry saying that there is no more evidence to justify reopening the case. 3 plots of land with 3 buildings on them belong to Support Sap Lom were assets frozen by the Anti-Corruption Commission, or NACC. The corruption watchdog said that during the course of the investigation, the subcommittee had found that Support transferred the assets to his daughter and son-in-law on January 15th and 19th of this year. The investigation follows a burglary at Support's house in November last year. A number of suspects were arrested after the heist took place, and they took about 200 million baht from the house and estimated that stacks of cash they saw left in the house could add up to as much as 1 billion baht. Support insisted that he had only 5 million baht in the house and that the money was part of a wedding gift for his daughter. The government's investigative committee earlier canceled any further investigations into the case due to insufficient evidence. The Minister of Transport confirms this claim. Media mogul and core yellow shirt protester Sondhi Limtongkul has been found guilty on 15 counts of business fraud and sentenced to 85 years in jail. The criminal court released him 10 million baht on bail a few hours ago. Sondhi Limtongkul of the Manager Group was found guilty on 15 counts of business fraud committed between 1996 and 1998. Despite being sentenced to 85 years imprisonment, under the securities law, the convicts will serve no more than 20 years in jail, regardless of the original sentencing. The case was based on fraudulent transactions between 2 listed companies, Manager Media Group and M Group, in order to secure 6 loans worth 1 billion baht from the Krung Thai Bank. The prosecution charged Sondhi and 3 defendants with comprising to doctor the minutes of Manager Media Board meetings in order to authorize him to act as a loan guarantor for the M Group. The court found that Sondhi had acted without authorization and failed to report his liabilities to the stock market. Even though the 4 defendants had pleaded guilty and asked for a suspended sentence, the court found no grounds for commuting the sentences. For Sondhi, the court ordered his imprisonment be served consecutively with 3 previous convictions for libel. On the other side of the political divide, a red shirt movement leader, Surachai Saedam, was also jailed today for lèse majesté. Surachai will be in prison for 7.5 years. The original jail term for Surachai Dang Wattananusorn, or Surachai Saedam, who violated Article 112 of the Criminal Code, was originally 15 years, as he showed no respect to the crown during his speech at red shirt rally sites in 2010 in Bangkok, Udon Thani, and Chiang Mai provinces. The sentence was halved because he admitted the 3 offenses. The court said Surachai was an educated person and a former member of Nakhon Si Thammarat Provincial Administrative Organization, yet he still committed a serious crime, defaming and insulting the royal family. After the verdict, Surachai said if the government is really sincere about reconciliation, they have to push forward with political amnesty. Sources say that Surachai, who still has another lèse majesté case in court, will seek a royal pardon. Artificial rain clouds are now curbing the dusty crisis in the north of Thailand. Today, only 3 more provinces have dust particles exceeding the health standards. The quantity of dust particles smaller than 10 microns is still higher than international standards in Chiang Rai, Phayao, and Lampang provinces. Residents in other provinces are shutting windows and doors as they stay inside and avoid doing any activities, as the haze can cause acute heart and respiratory problems. Artificial rain seeding was also implemented in the skies above Chiang Mai, Lampang, and Phayao, which helped reduce the haze dramatically. Other areas were preparing water trucks to spray water to curb the amount of dust floating in the air. Meanwhile, the Meteorological Department says that more storms are heading towards the north and northeast of Thailand. The storms which struck the upper regions yesterday destroyed many houses. Hundreds of houses in Kalasin's Hoi Phung district were devastated by the tropical storms which hit Thailand last night. Nong Bulampu and Roi Et provinces also saw hundreds of houses and many ad hoardings collapse due to the strong winds. Thousands were also left without electricity. This also affected the water supply system. The Met Office says that thunder showers are expected to affect every region of the country tomorrow due to a low-pressure weather front, which will also bring strong winds from the northeast. Temperatures are also expected to fall by 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. The Prime Minister announced that today the Cabinet made changes to the government's water management plan after receiving royal advice from His Majesty the King. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra told the press after her meeting with water experts that the government will now change its flood prevention game plan to focus more on the geographical factors of each area, especially agricultural areas, rather than just setting up flood prevention lines. Next week, the PM says the government should be able to allocate 2 million rai, or 350,000 hectares of land, to be designed as water retention basins, that is, letting them flood for other areas to remain dry. Meanwhile, Thurakit Bandit University found that almost 44% of small and medium-sized businesses, or SMEs, are not ready for another round of floods. Following the government's plan for floodways to help drain water, Dr. Rungtip Chodnapalai talked to Dr. Sopon Pornchokchai, president of the Agency for Real Estate Affairs, about the situation around the Monkey Chic and offer some advice for those who plan to invest in property.
So it may be around 10% of the property value in that area, and if it is flooded every year.
And you think that it will be flooded every year?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Should be no. And I think to protect the Bangkok, we should do some dike and also some dam to protect our Bangkok.
And in terms of the confidence in investing in the property in Thailand from the foreigners, what do you think that there's still confidence in Thailand?
In the case of Bangkok, maybe doubtful, but mostly they will go for resort properties in Phuket, Samui, Pattaya, and Hua Hin, so that won't be affected. And if in the case of luxury residential condominiums in the city or office building, those won't be affected by flooding because
Such
it will be in the hub.
You mean the business area, central business district?
It is.
And what about the consumers? Any suggestion?
If we want to buy a house, maybe we should not buy in the floodway area or in the risky area, except we are used to that area, maybe we can consider. And if we can buy some property that is below the market price, because the buyers, the seller are afraid of flooding, maybe that can be a good investment.
The Senate Subcommittee on Environmental Impacts is asking the government to postpone operations at Don Mueang Airport, scheduled to restart next week. The committee says that the airport may still be disease-prone. However, the AOT says that March 6 will be the reopening date of Don Mueang Airport no matter what. This is the first time that the Subcommittee for Environment and Air Transportation senators visited Don Mueang Airport after receiving complaints regarding pollution, dirt, and bacteria from the flood last year. Officials from the Airport of Thailand Public Company Limited, or AOT, explained that Don Mueang Airport has been restructured and sanitized to kill germs and bacteria. The Subcommittee for Environmental senators are concerned about the possibility of spreading bacteria. However, AOT insists that Don Mueang must be open on March the 6th. Tomorrow, health experts and scholars from Mahidol University will visit the site to see if Don Mueang is ready for operation on March the 8th. Following Thai PBS's news coverage of last year's flood and the ongoing report on disaster warning planning, a researcher from NHK, which is Japan's national broadcaster, has come to collect information and news coverage about Thai PBS's reporting of natural disasters to be published in the NHK journal. Here's more.
Tokunobu Tanaka, a researcher from the Research Institute at NHK in Japan, demonstrates an example of a news report by NHK broadcast during the tsunami in March last year. The item not only reported what was happening, but the reporter also gave out warning information so that people could seek shelter in advance. NHK continued to report on the post-tsunami recovery. Takanobu conducted an interview with Thai PBS's director before going to collect more information in Indonesia and Malaysia.
But I hear a lot of good reputations. Yes, people trusted your programs, and you try to educate and warn the public in a very easy language and credible.
This NHK researcher said that he has heard that the reputation of Thai PBS is that audiences believe in the information Thai PBS news reports provide, and that Thai PBS are leading the way in providing information, warning of disasters in simple and easy to understand ways, a method which NHK wishes to learn from Thai PBS. Takanobu says that NHK disaster reports started on radio to provide timely warnings, and news reporters are well trained to report natural disaster news. The warnings are provided via many channels, including television, radio, internet and mobile phone.
Thank you all for watching Thai PBS English News Service. We'll see you again tomorrow night. I'm Subhajwan Klinsawan. Sawadee krap.